What's up, guys? Nostalgic Row back. I know it's been a while. I'm working on getting some things going again. Long story short, life changes. So yeah, I'm gonna address all that in a video later. But for right now, let's talk about Star Wars Return. Return. Why would I say that? Last Jedi. Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I was gonna say Return of the Jedi. Jeez. Anyway, it's yeah, it's been a long time here. So anyway, kicking things off here. Obviously I went and saw the movie. I actually saw it opening night, 7:30, like the first people to see it. And I intentionally held off from recording something because this movie's very polarizing to me, and I wanted to hold back because, as you guys probably know, with a lot of my reviews, I'm kind of harsh on movies, especially the first time I see them, and then after a while I kind of warm up to them after I watch them 2-3 times. And a lot of the questions I had about this movie, I started reading a little bit online and trying to find some different things, and sure enough, other people had the same thoughts. So for once, I thought that was a good thing that, maybe I'm not just the crazy one here. So yeah, anyway, let's go ahead and kind of break this down a little bit with The Last Jedi. So like I said, to me, this is a very polarizing movie. And I have a few cons, I have a few pros to it. So let's start off with the cons. So the biggest problem with this movie for me is that what Disney has done with Star Wars. Now, this is something that obviously times change, blah, 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 and that's kind of what they tried to beat you over the head with in this movie. But to me, Disney has kind of now turned Star Wars into something else. These movies are no longer Star Wars. What they are box office movies, big blockbuster movies set in Star Wars. It's no longer Star Wars movies that turn out to be like big, huge box office success. They got a formula that they do, and I've complained about this in the past, is that, like the whole Marvel universe, I can't totally get behind those movies because they just do these certain things to them that take me out of it, and that's what they're doing with Star Wars, except this movie really seemed to ramp it up. And the majority of that is the snarkiness of this movie, is that there's just so many blatant jokes, and Force Awakens had it, and that's what kind of turned me off to it. But going back, I watch it, and now I'm like, okay, it's not as bad, but I'm still not a huge fan of it. And then Rogue One had a little bit too, but Rogue One kind of hit more on what Star Wars kind of was, as far as like the jokes were concerned, stuff like that. This movie just, everyone has a joke to tell, everyone has to be snarky, and it doesn't work for me. Like, about halfway through the movie, like, I was so upset because, like, it's just constant joke after joke and one-liners and snarkiness, and it's just like all these characters are the same. Like, they all, like, and that's what bugs me, is that, like, all these characters, you can swap them in and out of, like, who's saying what, and you won't know. And that's what, like, that's what really bothers me about these Star Wars films. And that's where it's like, not like that the originals didn't even have snark. Like, they did. Like, I mean, Han Solo, he was a snarky character, but like the way that he delivered it, it felt natural. It was his character. That's what he was. Whereas in this movie, just, it's all forced. It's all like looking right at you, wink, wink, haha, we made a funny, now let's continue with the movie. And that's what doesn't work for me. And that's why it feels much more of like, just, this is a generic blockbuster compared to this is a Star Wars film. Probably like the biggest offender of it that like really like probably best describes it is that when Luke goes to drink milk, that scene right there, and how the alien just like stares like right at the camera and is like, yeah, this is happening, like stuff like that. Like, I'm just like, that's not Star Wars, that's not how it would be done. It just, yeah. I mean, ultimately, I guess the best way to describe it for me with this film in particular is that it felt like a giant middle finger to the fanboys, and trying to tell us that it's time to move on, guys. We're ready to tell different stories and not George Lucas's story and stuff like that, which on the one hand, I'm okay with. But on the other hand, this movie is just way too blatant. Anyway, next big complaint that I had about the movie is the plot. The plot was, for the most part, pointless. Like, it was really, you had the plot with Poe and Finn and that whole thing, and that was all completely pointless. Everything they did was completely pointless. Just more or less, they gave them something to do throughout the entire movie, but it ultimately had nothing really to do with what needed to be done, what was going on. And that's like how the whole movie was, is that the scenario they created was completely pointless. So nothing really came out of all that. I mean, it did, but like it was a very, very weak plot. Now the stuff with Rey and Luke, like that was pretty interesting and that was good, but everything else was just very, very weak. The other big problems here, I talked about the snark. The other part is that this movie did not feel like a middle movie in the trilogy. This felt like yet another reboot of Star Wars. A lot of things that happen in Force Awakens, they just kind of throw out the door. Now, some of it I don't disagree with. A lot of other stuff, though, it was like, what? Okay. Why would you do that? And like a lot of it is just like they're simply just like killing people left and right now. Like they're in the ending itself. Like, oh my God, the ending. I couldn't believe that ending. Like that of all the things like I talked about, of this not feeling like a Star Wars, that was the most un-Star Wars thing in this movie. And yeah, so it didn't feel like a middle trilogy at all. It felt like yet another reboot. We had these characters that, we were supposed to care about, that then they just wiped them out and just said, like, no, you don't need to care about them, and all this stuff. And it was just, yeah, I mean, if this was the first one, now if this was like The Force Awakens, like, actually, I mean, that's probably the best way to look at it, is that, like, if you took just a few, like 20 minutes of The Force Awakens and then added this movie to it, I think as a whole you'd have a way better movie and a way better way to kick off a Star Wars new trilogy. But instead it was like, okay, you wasted your time watching Force Awakens. Now here's what we're actually doing. It didn't feel right. It didn't work for me. Other things that didn't work for me. The lack of lightsaber battles. Come on, this is Star Wars. You at least have to have one cool lightsaber battle. Now, I will say the throne room battle, that was cool, but there's still really no lightsabers clashing against each other. That was more of just a generic fight, but it was still cool having the whole lightsaber over the shoulder thing and stuff like that. Some cool stuff there. But for the fact that we did not see a Jedi throwdown in this movie, I mean, obviously you had the ending that was pseudo lightsaber fighting, but not really. So that was a disappointment too, because I mean, out of all the things that you need to do in a Star Wars movie, I think a lightsaber fight is the least, like, not the least, but like the most important thing. But instead they focus more on some other battles and starfights, stuff like that. So, but that was kind of disappointing to me. Not a huge deal, but still, it's a Star Wars movie. I realize A New Hope barely had any lightsaber fighting, so they were kind of doing that. But, we need to see some lightsaber fighting. Up next, the CGI in this film had to be the worst CGI since Attack of the Clones. There's a whole sequence with Finn and Rose when they're riding on something that just looked terrible. They CGI'd Chewbacca's face. At least I'm 99% sure that they CGI'd it, and it looked terrible. Now, my buddies that I went with, they didn't notice it, but I told them, like, watch it in the trailers, because I noticed it in the trailers, and it had me concerned, because it's like, come on, Chewbacca, you had the full costume and everything, why would you CGI his face? And apparently they did. So that was terrible, just terrible CGI on a lot of different things. And then finally, the Porg. Sorry, screw you, Disney. Those were nothing more than a cash grab. You guys clearly just wanted to make some cute animals so you could sell some crap, and that's the only reason why they're in this film. They serve absolutely no purpose outside of giving Chewbacca someone to talk to, because you guys did not put Chewbacca in this storyline at all. So you needed him to have somebody to interact with, and you made it these freaking Porg. The Porg are stupid, and they're one of the worst things ever. I mean, if people complain about the Ewoks, I'm sorry, the Porg are on top of that. Ewoks at least had a point. It was relevant to the story. I understand why maybe some people didn't like it, but these Porg, you wipe out every scene that they're in, the movie is 20 minutes faster. And on top of that, I guess then you would cut Chewbacca. Because I seriously cannot think of a single scene. Well, no, there's one scene when he breaks down the door to Luke's hut that he's in. That's it. Otherwise, like, you could cut him out. If you cut out the Porg, you're cutting out Chewbacca. That's the only purpose. Get there and make money. That was stupid. All right. Now, for some of the pros that I liked about this movie, though. Kylo Ren and Rey, awesome job. I liked what they did. Kylo Ren, I did not like him in Force Awakens because he was a little emo punk baby striving to be Darth Vader. In this movie, they established that, you know what, he's not going to be Darth Vader anymore. He's going to be his own guy, and I think for the most part that worked. I still didn't like the jokiness with Hux and everything and him throwing him around and stuff like that. Again, that's little stuff that's not Star Wars. That's Hollywood blockbuster BS now. But as far as Kylo, his acting and everything else about it, it was good. I enjoyed it. And Rey, I thought they did a nice job with her. And I'm really happy that with the parents' reveal that she's a nobody. And that's what I was hoping for, is that, like, it wasn't some sort of like, oh, she's a Skywalker through this convoluted thing, or, you know, she's actually Kylo's sister. And, you know, I know some people are like, well, maybe they'll still touch on that, because I'm in the rarity of that. It's a lot of fanboys are like, no, she needs to be blah, blah, blah. I was okay with her being a nobody. I think it's better. I get where in The Force Awakens they set up some things, but I think the easy way to argue that is that she's a Jedi. She's in touch with the Force, and so therefore she was first getting experience with it, and the Force was actually guiding her on her journey of, like, you need to find Luke, and then all these other things will happen. There's still plenty of ways to write in some of that stuff, but I really like that she's a nobody, and I hope they stay with that. All right. The other cool thing that I liked was, and this is one that my buddy, he absolutely hated, and that's when he said, I'm done with this movie, this is terrible. Personally, I thought it was a nice touch, is they brought Yoda back. Now, the puppet Yoda looked terrible. And I read that they said that, oh, we used, like, the original molds and blah, blah, blah. It still looked bad. I mean, as far as, like, having all these other CGI things, to have Yoda look that bad as a puppet, I mean, it was disappointing. But as far as what he meant to the story, I liked. I know my one buddy hated the line of the page turners they are, you know, like that line, like, but I enjoyed that. I mean, if there's one character that is supposed to be snarky, it's Yoda. I mean, that was established in Empire Strikes Back, is that he can be a little snarky. So him and Luke, that felt totally natural and great. I did enjoy that part of it. And as a whole, the second half was pretty solid. Kind of once they got things rolling, like I said, that first hour was brutal to me because it just felt like the blockbuster thing. And then the second half, they started getting it feeling more Star Wars-ish. But yeah, as a whole, though, like, that's why, like, I'm not totally hating the film. And that's kind of what happened with a lot with the prequels, was that, like, the first hour I'm just like, ugh, but then, like, the second hour would kind of pull me in, and that's what this one kind of did. Up next is that this film, and this is something that I haven't seen a lot of people touch on, but this film is really, like, a feminist blockbuster. A lot of strong female characters, and I love that. Like, I love that, you know, you had Laura Dern's character, Carrie Fisher, Daisy Ridley. I mean, all of those strong characters, and Rose is a strong character too. I didn't mind her at all with what she was doing. So, like, a lot of strong female characters, which was great, and, like, felt natural, especially with the story and everything. So I'm glad they're taking that approach, that they're expanding it, you know, and that's a huge win for the storytelling, was to do something like that. So that was awesome for me. Finally, at the end of the day, this movie does want me to know more. I do want to find out what the story is. Granted, I'm hitting more of a point where I'm like, if they're going to crank out a Star Wars movie every year, I don't know if I necessarily want to go see one every single year. But this movie at least still has me intrigued enough that I want to finish out this trilogy. I still think there's a lot of things they left open. But yeah, like, I'm kind of glad Rian Johnson isn't doing the next one, but at the same time, he's going to have his own trilogy. So until they announce what that is, I don't know what to think. Because, like I said, I think with him, they went with the approach of, we're going to wipe out all fanboys' expectations, which, like I said, is good. But at the same time, the way they did it just felt like the entire time was just middle finger in the air and screw you, fanboys. Screw you guys. We're doing it this way. Screw you, screw you, screw you. And that's why this movie's polarizing for me. Is that, like I said, Disney, I think, is looking at this as far as money's concerned, not about telling the story. And so they're more focused on how can we make merchandise and how can we make money more than how can we tell this epic story. I think that they've made the wrong decision in the sense that they're trying to get the trilogy movies away from the Skywalker legacy, in the lineage of it, because that's what Star Wars was with these trilogies, is that it was about the Skywalkers. But I understand why they're doing it, so that's where it's like, hopefully the next one can wrap all that up and make it clear of like what they were trying to do with this movie. Because if they don't, this movie's going to be like the worst one. It's telling that the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is as low as the prequels, because I think, like I said, I think they left a lot of things, a lot of loose ends, a lot of things that they could tie up that they just blatantly spat in the face of Force Awakens. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I do want to see this movie again. I'm half tempted to go out to the theater and see it again, because maybe I'd have a difference of opinion, but at the same time, I read a lot of things online that I'm like, that's exactly what I was thinking. So I don't know if seeing this movie again immediately would clear any of that up. I think that JJ has a lot of work to do, because I still expect this movie's going to do good, money-wise, but I don't think that it's going to come anywhere near Force Awakens. And because of how this movie is, I feel like now there's even more pressure on JJ to deliver on that third movie, because I think they're going to find out that a lot of people are leaving this franchise. And that's fine. I guess, at some point you have to give it up, maybe. I don't know. But I think with this particular film, they alienated the franchise quite a bit. And so JJ's got a lot of work to figure out that story and make it clear to us on why we had to see what we did in The Last Jedi, to solve all the issues. I mean, yeah. Yeah, I can't really sum it up anymore. Like I said, like I purposely sat out talking about this film for a little bit just so I could get a better idea and more thought behind it, but I'm still kind of struggling a little bit. So anyway, I guess a few other things I didn't touch on that, like, I guess I'll just kind of randomly talk on them, but like Captain Phasma, like that was one that, like, they hyped up the character in Force Awakens and they just threw her in the garbage compactor. They brought her back in this one, and not much difference. I mean, they definitely tried to make her look more epic and cool and threatening, and they still just ultimately threw her away. Now maybe she'll come back again. That's certainly the rumor right now, but yeah, I mean, a wasted character, but they're likening her to Boba Fett. I don't know if I see that, in terms of that. Boba Fett's a completely different beast. Phasma, I could care less, because they've just thrown her away for 2 movies. So trying to bring her back for an epic third one, unless if she goes on to bloody rampages and murders millions of rebels and stuff like that, like, I just don't see how they can redeem her. I was really disappointed in Snoke's arc, but I liked it and didn't like it. I guess I would have liked to know a little bit more about Snoke, or at the very least not have what happened to him until later in the movie. But for how they did it, like, I did like that part at least, but it was definitely disappointing not to know more about him. A lot of people are hyping up Mark Hamill's performance in this. I thought it was kind of on the fence. Again, part of it is his character was a little too snarky, blah, 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 kind of combination Yoda, Obi-Wan type. It didn't totally work for me, but I mean, Mark Hamill has never been like the most amazing actor in the world. So that's where I feel like specifically kind of the scene that they kept replaying back and forth about what happened between him and Kylo, like that specifically, just he didn't have the chops to pull it off, I think. And that's nothing against him. That's just simply, that was my, like, watching that over and over, like just didn't quite work for me. Not that showing it over and over didn't work, because it worked in that sense, just his acting in that scene in particular. Carrie Fisher I thought was great, in terms of what Leia was doing in the movie. She didn't do a ton though, but like it still worked. I know a lot of people are criticizing the whole floating in space thing, but I actually thought that was really cool, because, and this is twofold, I guess, is because obviously Carrie Fisher passed away this past year. And so in her scene, it's very early in the movie where all of a sudden you see her die, or so it appears. And so I immediately got upset, because it's just like, no way, like that's not how they're going to wipe her out in this series. Like, to my understanding, is she was throughout the entire movie. So if they change something just because of that, like terrible decision. So I actually got pretty mad. And then when I saw her like come back and float and stuff, it was just like, okay, yes, awesome. She's not done with this movie. So and to me, it made sense, like, because we never seen Leia use the Force or do anything like that. So for her to do something like that, I think, to me, it made sense. It was cool. At the same time, though, it disappoints me that we will never get to see what they had intended for the next movie, unless if they rewrite it somehow that we know that's supposed to be her type deal. So for me, the floating in space thing, I actually liked it. Okay, I'm one of the few. I thought it was cool. Finn's character got better, but at the same time, he's a throwaway character. There's just not a whole lot to him. Rose was a nice addition. I mean, she did what she needed to do. I'm not going to complain about that. Laura Dern, she was great with what she did. Benicio del Toro, his character was fun. He was obviously a Lando, Han Solo type character to throw into the movie. I think we're going to see him again. Just the way that his whole thing played out, it leads me to believe that it could be a very Lando-like situation where they confront him in the third movie, and yeah, he's with the rebels then, and whatever. Like, I don't think we've seen the last of him. Maz Kanata was a dumb thing to add her back in with how they did it. It was clear, again, that's part of the snarky cliche Hollywood crap, how they put her in there. Did not like that at all. And then, yeah, like I said, Kylo I liked, and Hux, I don't care for. I mean, I get why they're making him the way that he is, but it just doesn't work for me. He's a comedy character. It doesn't work. The First Order is not nearly as threatening as the Empire was in the original trilogy, so that's disappointing, but that's what they're going with. And then BB-8, let's talk about BB-8 for a minute. BB-8, like in the first movie, he was kind of this cute little R2-D2 replacement. I could kind of see getting into him. This movie, he's just like freaking, like, he does everything. He takes people out. He can fix things. He can do all, like, there's nothing that BB-8 can't do. He can drive an AT-ST, obvious throwback to Return the Jedi. Yeah, I mean, he went from being like this cute little robot to now he's just this badass thing that it doesn't work. Like, it was clearly one of those, like, this is for the kids, haha, look how funny it is. Just didn't work. So anyway, yeah, I mean, I guess I'll wrap it up here, because I could keep rambling for a long time on this, and I've already gone 20-some minutes. So anyway, ultimately, yes, very polarizing movie. They got a lot to do to wrap up with the trilogy. I'm hitting a burnout point with Star Wars, mainly because of Disney taking over. Like, when George Lucas, that was one thing I was trying to figure out the best way to describe this to my buddies, because it's like, when George Lucas was still in control, I at least could disagree with George Lucas and just say, I don't think he made the right decision there. With Disney, though, now it's like, it's a whole conglomerate. Things are way more planned out. I feel like George Lucas may have planned out quite a bit, but at the same time, he ultimately made the decisions. And I'm trying to hold back a sneeze here. So, yeah, so it's one of those things that's like, I didn't know when there'd be another Star Wars movie coming out, if there would be, or a series or something like that. So it was more fun to debate back and forth and figure something out. With Disney, they clearly have a plan. They're clearly trying to tie different things together because there's some Easter eggs in this movie with Rogue One and stuff like that. And so it's like, so they clearly have this big map of everything that's going on and all these different movies they're going to make, and they're trying to tie them all in together. And so a lot of these decisions were probably already made well in advance. So yeah, it's, I guess we'll see. We'll see what they do with it. Han Solo should be coming out soon, and I'll probably go see that one in theaters. I mean, I'm gonna go see that one in theaters, but we'll see how that movie goes, because depending on, I'm curious to see how The Last Jedi's box office does. If it gets at least $500 million in the U.S., which I think it will, but like if it goes much higher than that, then I think Disney will continue down the trail that they have started here. If it stays under or just barely at $500 million, I think they need to start rethinking. Obviously, $500 million is good money, but at the same time too, like these are Star Wars movies. They're not like Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that, where you hope for a $350 billion box office in the US, but if it does more like 250, that's okay. Like, I think that's how you have to look at it, is that like they need to go over $500 million for them to be like, okay, stay the course. If it stays under $500 million, then they got to be like, all right, we need to make some changes. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm hoping to have some new videos coming up more in the next few weeks. Like I said, I've had some things change, and that's why I haven't really made any videos outside of that Tough Mudder one, which I was debating about even putting on here. That was just a fun thing that I did, so I'm glad people are watching that and they're enjoying that. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully in the next few weeks, like I said, I'll have some update videos and stuff like that, and get back to doing some reviews on the regular. Anyway, what did you guys think of The Last Jedi? Did you enjoy it? Did you not like it? Did you have the same problems that I had with it? Did you like the same things I like about it? Please comment in the boxes down below. Please like and subscribe. And as always,